In previous lesson, we have made first part of shape morphing animation, but if we play it, there is a problem. Phone is not showing here, and then it appears suddenly. This is because it's set to alpha matte and the circle matte layer is starting from here. So our phone appears from this frame, and if we stretch it, it will again create problems in further animation. To fix it, keep playhead just before the circle matte. Let's trim this layer. Now duplicate this layer and put it below to the circle matte. Now stretch it for few frames and trim it from the left side. And on this phone layer, we don't need any track matte. Stretch this layer for a few more frames so that it will be visible till we create next transition. Let's preview it. Alright, this part is looking some odd because we have not created any transition yet. So let's begin it from 2 seconds. First we need to create basic structure of the transforming object, which is a USB drive. So take pen tool and draw a rectangle. To measure it, we can open grid from here and it will show this graph on the screen. Now let's create a parallel rectangle. First I will create a plain rectangle and use these graph points to get same gap between all nodes. We could use rectangle tool for it and then we could convert that to Bezier path. But I'm doing this to show you maximum options of the After Effect. And now we can adjust its corner points. But before we do that, I want rounded corners on this rectangle. So expand it, click on Add button and apply rounded corners. Expand effect options and increase its radius. It will add roundness to the corners of the shape. Turn off this grid now, we don't need it anymore. Let's put this layer below to the circle. Move it to upper side to match its position to the circle. Let's trim this layer. Now position its anchor point to its center. Let's change its color. I am going to use light shade of yellow color. Now expand its shape properties and select this path parameter. And as we have seen before, it will allow us to modify shape's nodes individually. Okay, let's animate its path. Add a keyframe. Go to 15th keyframe and add same keyframe. Go back to first keyframe and let's drag upper and lower nodes close to each other. And try to keep in between distance close to the circle so that transition will merge both objects. Otherwise it will seem some different. It will animate something like this. Now let's apply ease on these keyframes. Let's adjust its graph so that it will be fast at start point and will be very slow at the end point. Let's preview it. Looking good. Now let's create a circle over this rectangle. Change its color to white and place it to the center of the rectangle. Deselect it and select it again to show the anchor point. Now place it to the center of the shape itself. Let me make it some big by using the scale property. Now let's see what should be timing to animate this. And to get it, let's animate it first. So trim it, open scale and position properties and add a keyframe on the scale. Set its value to 0, move 15 more frames and set it to 100 again. Let's check it. I think it should not be completely disappeared here. So change scale value to 10 so that it will look like the yellow circle has been transformed into the white solid circle. Add a keyframe to the position and add same keyframe here. Now on the first keyframe, move it to upper side, nearly vertical center of the rectangle, and also try to keep it close to the yellow circle. Fit the screen, and let's trim this yellow circle layer because we don't need it anymore as transition is changing. And keep this rectangle layer above to the yellow circle so that all layers of the next object will be together. It will help us to manage it efficiently. Open animated parameters of this layer. Now apply easy ease on these keyframes. Select position keyframe and open graph editor. Make it fast at the start point and make it slow at the end point. But don't make it too fast because there is a slight change in the circle's position. Now select scale keyframe and make it fast at start point, and on the end point make it very slow. Let's preview it. I think scaling should be faster, and this path animation should also be faster. Preview it once again. Now let's make animation slow a little bit by increasing timing between the keyframes. Play it. Nice. Let's rename layers. Call it USB basic shape. Call this one USB inner circle. Now let's change color of this circle to dark brown. Duplicate it and change its color to white again. I don't want to play both circles together, so start this layer after 2 frames of the lower circle. Now it will play something like this. Let's preview it from here. Looking nice. Now let's animate upper parts. So take rounded rectangle tool and draw a rectangle. Keep it to the center of the USB basic shape, and by using pan behind tool, place its anchor point to the center of this shape. Let's create one more rounded rectangle above to it. Again, place it to the center of the lower rectangle, and using pan behind tool, center its anchor point. And in last, let's create a circle over this rectangle to complete the object. Put anchor point to its center and keep this circle to the center of the upper rectangle. Let's change its color to dark brown. Fit the screen. Select all these layers and let's put these below to the USB basic shape so that it will be below to the yellow rectangle. Now let's check for the animation timing. I think it would be better to animate it from here. So let's trim it. Let's animate its position property. Add keyframe. Move 10 more frames and add same keyframe. Go to first keyframe and move it down to hide it. Select both keyframes and apply easy ease. Open graph editor, make it fast on the first keyframe and slow on the last keyframe. Preview it. Fine. Let's animate upper two shapes from this keyframe. But before animating it, we will need to rename all layers. It's very important to manage layers effectively, otherwise, it will create a lot of confusion in selecting and manipulating them. Okay, now I want to animate position property of both layers. So we need not to animate them individually if we want to animate them simultaneously. What we can do, we can just parent this top circle to this rectangle. And now we can animate position of this rectangle only and circle will animate with that. Add a keyframe, move 10 more frames and add same keyframe. Now on this keyframe, just bring it down to hide it. Let's make it bouncy. So let's decrease timing between the keyframes so that it will bounce fast. Now on this keyframe, just move it slightly upper side. Go to next frame and add same keyframe here in order to avoid a quick bounce. And at last, move it to its actual position. Now add interpolation to keyframes. Now go to graph editor and make it slow on very last keyframe. And I'm not going to change other keyframes because on initial keyframes it will just bounce. So animation should be fast. Let's preview it. Looking well. Just one correction. Increase timing between these keyframes. Let's play it. To get the whole idea, let's play it from the beginning. Excellent. So it looks shapes are morphing from one to another, and it seems one object is transforming into the other. But as we have told you, sometimes they actually morph, but many times they won't. It's only transition which give it a feel. So in next lesson, we will create the third object.